Welcome to this Times Techies Webinar. I'm Akhil George, and I will be moderating this discussion that we're having in partnership with InOrg. Today, we have three experts with us who can shed some light on how GCCs can leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to build customer-centric solutions. We have with us Anurag Goswami, VP of Delivery at InOrg. Anurag is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of proven success in enhancing operational efficiency and scalability for dynamic organizations across sectors such as IT, ITES, product, and BFSI. His multifaceted experience spans IT operations program and product management, business management, vendor governance, and organizational strategy. He also excels in workforce management, client relations, operations and technologies, transformation, and corporate executive scorecard governance, all while championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Adept at navigating complex matrix environments and geographically dispersed businesses, Anurag fosters alignment and builds strong collaborative relationships with cross-functional teams. He has played a pivotal role in scaling technology teams and has deep expertise in global capability center setup, build, operate, transfer models, and driving business growth through the strategic integration of talent, technology, and process. Welcome, Anurag.
Thank you, Akhil.
We also have Rakesh Rajkumar, Executive Vice President of Solutions Engineering at V4C.ai. With 8 years of experience as a solutions architect and engineer, Rakesh brings a global perspective from participating in remote years work travel program in Asia. He specializes in front-end web technologies, machine learning, and AI research. Skilled in fast-paced, client-focused environments, Rakesh excels at problem-solving, delivering proof of concepts, demos, and presentations. Trained at Bell, he is adept at negotiating and influencing stakeholders to deliver optimized solutions that maximize client satisfaction. Welcome, Rakesh.
Glad to be here.
Finally, we have Vinodh Ramachandran, Director of Data Science and Analytics at Neiman Marcus Group's GCC in Bangalore. Vinodh is a retail analytics leader with 20 years experience working for Fortune 100 retailers like Target, Lowe's, and HPC. Over the course of 2 decades, Vinodh has demonstrated strong leadership setting up high-performance analytics and data science teams that have delivered tremendous business impact. Building on a foundation of strong business acumen and leveraging the power of machine learning, Vinodh has delivered products and solutions that have truly been embraced by the businesses and have set up data science as a key competitive advantage for these retailers. Vinodh is an analytics translator and a storyteller that believes in the importance of context-driven data solutions and is a strong proponent of analytics leaders having a strong voice in business strategy. Welcome, Vinodh.
Thank you, Akhil. Happy to be here.
So those who are viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box, and I will put them to Anurag, Rakesh, and Vinodh at the end of the webinar. So welcome to all of you. Why don't we just jump in? Rakesh, why don't you start? Maybe you can help us understand how exactly has AI ML changed the landscape of customer-centric solutions that GCCs work on? Is there more impact on some industries than others?
Yeah, that's a great question, Akhil. So essentially, based on what we've seen at V4C, and maybe just to give a preamble of what V4C does, we are, an SI that boasts a wealth of knowledge in the AI, ML, and data sciences space. And our goal as an organization is to proliferate the adoption of Gen AI by enabling its end users. And so when it comes to all of the industries that we kind of focus on, the reality is that the AI and ML as a concept has kind of made its way into the boardrooms of every single industry. So it absolutely does not discriminate, right? We have use cases anywhere from the financial industry to healthcare to manufacturing and everything in between. So I can kind of speak to maybe a couple examples that I've personally been able to be privy to. But the reality is every single industry so far has kind of adopted the need for generative AI and just, machine learning as a whole. And it's not going to slow down anytime soon. It's going to be the adoption is going to be increasing tenfold as time progresses. and as CEOs find the need for it as well. So I personally have quite a bit of experience in the manufacturing, automotive, and energy space, as I used to kind of provide integration solutions for those sectors at MuleSoft prior to joining V4C. And so what I've been noticing as a pretty common trend in manufacturing specifically is the need for predictive maintenance, right? And so in a nutshell, what that is essentially taking advantage of the fact that almost every single piece of equipment on a shop floor, for example, is retrofitted with, dozens, if not hundreds of different sensors that track every single motion of those pieces of equipment. Not only to make sure that the uptime of these shop floors is maintained, but also just for the ability to keep your biggest assets, up to date, right? And so when we think about, what that entails, you are essentially collecting data from all of these pieces of equipment that could range from, tens of thousands of dollars all the way up to millions of dollars, right? And so there's a vested interest in all of these companies to ensure that not only is the piece of equipment going to, stand the test of time, but it's also going to allow you to minimize the amount of, planned downtime that you incur at a shop floor. Because the reality is, whether you're producing Coca-Cola bottles or, Mercedes Benzes, right? The any time that you spend on the shop floor not being put towards production is going to reduce the amount of revenue that you're able to recognize. So they minimize the windows of maintenance, and they also maximize the shelf life of these pieces of equipment. And so what we do with a lot of these pieces of equipment is we're able to hone in and collect all of the data that is going to be sent out from the IoT sensors to some sort of a data store, whether in the cloud or on a bare metal server. And ultimately, what we want to do with predictive maintenance is to take in all of these individual metrics and make sense of it, right? For example, you have things as minute as finite as the number of rotations per minute that a specific arm on the shop floor will be able to do, the temperature with which the overall piece of equipment is going to hit from a maximum threshold capacity. The number of oscillations, all of these individual pieces of data are being collected, right? So when we think about, how we make sense of this data, right? That's kind of where the sweet spot needs to be figured out, because ultimately, a CNC machine and an industrial robot might pull the same types of, data for, across the operations that they provide, but the operating threshold from a temperature perspective of an industrial robot might be very different from a CNC machine. So it's not like we can kind of collect all of these individual data sets from individual types of equipment and feed it into one giant model and be able to, draw insights from a predictive maintenance standpoint. We have to kind of be a little bit more fine-tuned in terms of kind of grouping categories of different types of machines. But in the same vein, we can't get too specific, right? And so there's kind of, two sides of the spectrum, right? On one side, you might want to generalize as much as possible so that the predictions are not going to be underfitted. But in the same vein, you don't want to, be too specific in individual pieces of equipment and be overfitting the data as well. So we're finding that, from a challenge standpoint, at V4C, as we consult for companies that want to provide predictive maintenance solutions at their companies, how do we straddle that line? How do we find the sweet spot? So that's a little bit about the predictive maintenance concept. On the kind of, when we think about healthcare, when we think about the financial institutions that we provide solutions for, we're also thinking about how to query against, very expansive document types, right? And so there's a concept of using an LLM to be able to query, with some sort of a front-end chatbot, but also providing context to that LLM via RAG. So RAG meaning retrieval augmented generation. This is essentially where you upload, whatever data sets that you want to provide so that you are able to sort of contextualize the data when you're, starting to query it. So the problem and the biggest challenge with this that we're slowly trying to find solutions for our clients around is the fact that even though it's kind of you're able to give context to the LLM via RAG, depending on what type of information it is, most of the time it's going to be proprietary and it's going to be confidential information. So for example, in the financial institution side of things, let's say if we're dealing with a mergers and acquisitions company, and we want to provide the reports that are generated for someone on the sell side to be able to pitch their company to a buy side client that is looking to purchase that company. All of the information, like the revenue over the past 5 years on a quarterly basis, or the competitive landscape, or where it stands within that space, it's going to be more or less confidential, right? And so you don't want to make this information publicly available. So a cloud hosted LLM may not work, because you now are any information that you're feeding the LLM is going to learn off of, and it's not going to be kind of secluded to your own space. So what we're trying to kind of come up with is a self-hosted LLM, where you have the ability to kind of gate it, and it's not going to feed into the overarching LLM. It's going to be kind of self-hosted. But with that comes the challenge of having to host it yourself, having to incur the costs. If you're going to host it on a bare metal server, or if you have your own cloud provider that's gated, you're going to have to pay for that, right? And that's going to be thousands of dollars a month. And so with that, we also have to think about the ROI there. Like, how much money is this going to save your company? If you're thinking about individuals that need to access this data at a very rapid pace, versus them having to go and individually search for the documents that would provide this information. So it's really thinking about the ROI, the return on investment for these specific type of things. So that's kind of another challenge that we're facing. But depending on how this works out, this can be a solution that can pretty much span any different type of industry, right? So financial sector, I just spoke about it, in healthcare as well. If you're thinking about patient data, right, and this is very sensitive information that we just absolutely cannot afford to share to a larger LLM. So this is something that we need to make sure that is self-hosted. So these are a couple examples that I've kind of been seeing.
You're seeing a lot of companies, different sectors coming to you, trying to use their data and fine-tune models. Are you seeing a lot of that happening?
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. So that's something that, a lot of our customers come to us with, and trying to their best to, even if they're models that they're building themselves, right? From scratch as well. A big part of it is making sure that, you're setting up the feature engineering appropriately. You're doing your due diligence so that the actual models themselves, once they've been created, are, operationalized as well.
Vinodh?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of, I would say, color from a retail industry standpoint. Again, I think from a GCC standpoint, has the landscape changed? Yes, absolutely. The landscape has changed in two ways. One is the kind of problems that we are working on is absolutely cutting edge kind of problems that we are trying, more futuristic. We are anticipating challenges as opposed to reacting to the problems that customers are facing. The second is we are able to do the, I would say, older problems, for lack of better words, on a much larger scale now, primarily because of modern technology stack. You have the availability of zettabytes of data, and of course you have compute capacity, which was not available maybe 10 years ago, for instance, right? So I think GCCs are at the forefront of driving cutting edge technology and digital transformation for the parent companies, and that is one of the primary reasons. I mean, you hear a lot about GCCs these days, almost 5 to 10 of them getting set up pretty much every month. And if you see the common thread across GCCs, it would be technology transformation or a digital transformation across industries. While I'm speaking for retail, this is the common thread across industries, right? And the modern technology advancements have enabled that, and GCCs are clearly at the forefront of driving this for the parent companies. From a retail standpoint, I think retail is by far the most customer-facing industry than anything else that I can think of. So customer experience, customer centricity, I think one miss in that, I would say experience from a customer standpoint, the customer is going to just, you're going to lose them. That's essentially what's going to happen. So we are literally, every decision is keeping the customer at the center of everything. So that's what retailers do. So from that standpoint, given the landscape has changed, there are a variety of solutions that the GCCs are powering for the larger enterprise. Most of it is centered around, I would say, personalization, right? So you shop on Amazon or Flipkart or any of these e-commerce websites, there are like recommendations, like Netflix, probably the I would say the first e-commerce company to introduce recommender systems, right? That's become like a staple for all the retailers. If you don't have a good recommender system, you're definitely going to be out of business, right? So you cannot do an omni-channel retail if you don't have recommender systems. So how can we get better at it? How can we use more data? How can we use better technology, right? Email marketing has become a lot more personalized than before, thanks to generative AI. Even customer care, I mean, depending upon the type of customer you are, you could be a gold customer for that retailer. I want to offer you a very dedicated customer experience. In India, banks do that, right? You have a relationship manager, and if depending on the tier of the customer that you are, the customer experience varies. So even retailers do that. Even for every retailer is kind of trying to revamp their loyalty program right now. How can AI and ML kind of provide more information about the customer and ensure and in turn kind of provide a great customer experience through loyalty marketing. And also inventory optimization, virtual trial room. I've seen this cool feature on Lenskart, but that is not very prevalent in a lot of retailers, but they're kind of moving towards that thanks to generative AI, right? So a lot of advancements, and much like every industry, retail has had a significant impact, mainly because of these advancements in AI and ML, availability of data, and tremendous compute capacity that we have available right now. So that's my take on retail.
Um, how long before these AI systems can predict what a customer wants before they even want it? I mean,
well,
yeah.
I mean,
will that day come?
It is already there, right? The problem is it's a tightrope walk between spooking out customers,
Yes.
to being able to exactly know what your customers want and being able to present them with let's say a coupon or an experience. So it's a really tightrope walk. It kind of infringes into privacy. So I would say retailers, I don't know if you remember, probably 10 years ago or even 12 years ago, Target, pioneer in I would say machine learning and AI in retail. I think they had sent out to a customer. It's out there in public, so I'm not speaking about anything that is confidential. I think a customer received some coupon related to maternity, and turns out he didn't know his daughter was pregnant, right? So so it's spooky. It definitely infringes on a lot of privacy. I think it's those days privacy was not much talked about as much as today, but yeah. So it's AI and ML, while it can definitely get into your headspace and know what you're thinking, I think we don't want AI to do that, right? So
I'm glad you mentioned that tension between privacy and convenience, right? You have to get that balance right.
Yep.
A lot of engineering has to go, and ethical consideration has to go behind that, right?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, excellent. Anurag, let's bring you in.
Yes.
For GCCs which serve global markets, how do they keep up with meeting rapidly changing customer expectations? How important is collaboration between global teams to bring out such solutions?
Right. Again, that's a good question, Akhil. And let me start by saying happy Friday to everyone. And let me also state that India is gained a unique position right now, known as a GCC capital of the world. And based on the latest report from NASSCOM, we have seen there are almost 1,700 plus GCCs currently, which call India as their home, with a market size of almost $65 billion, and also ensuring we have 1.9 million professionals working on it. And the work which is happening is really cutting edge. I know my colleagues Rakesh and Vinodh did mention about it in terms of artificial intelligence, big data and analytics, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, and robotics as well. So in a nutshell, yeah, we are really in a very sweet spot, and there is always what I can foresee right now is a very exponential growth in the next decade as well, where there are chances of really getting up to 100 billion as a market size for these GCCs within India. A bit of InOrg, I would like to touch base how InOrg plays over here and what's InOrg about, as you touched in my introduction as well. So what we call ourselves is really bringing that excellence at scale by transforming and providing those global solutions, helping our customers, clients set up their GCCs within India. So in a nutshell, we are those comprehensive white glove GCC solution providers in helping set up their practice, in really helping them scale, not just from a talent perspective, but from a technology, process, back-end and front-end operations, really ensuring the entire 360-degree kind of a spectrum, which anyone, clients who are, or our customers who are based out of any other regions, who has an aspiration to go global, who would like to really expand their business, that's where InOrg comes as a catalyst to really transform and build and help their business grow to scale. So that's pretty much about us. Coming back to your question, I know it has got two parts of it, but I'll start with the first one. So literally global capability centers, right, that serve international markets must continuously try to rapidly manage the changing customer expectations, which are driven by technology advancements to start off with, then the market disruptions, and also the evolving consumer needs, what we see through. I would like to share a few strategies in terms of these and the importance of collaboration of the global teams, which will help meet these expectations. Yeah. To start off with, it's how we are leveraging Agile, the entire methodology, and also helping scale the operations. So Agile frameworks really, I would say GCCs are adopting it because we see the merit, and they really enable them to react swiftly to those dynamic conditions, the market changes which happen. Secondly, Agile methodologies really emphasize on shorter development cycles and continuous iterations, which helps them to adapt to the new challenges, as well as the customer feedback there and then, and really adopt to the market trends. A study by McKinsey says the organizations which are really adopting Agile have a high productivity chances or increasing their productivity up to 20 to 30%, and equally their employee engagement ratios by 10 to 15%. To me, those are pivotal aspects in terms of really managing those customer expectations.
Maybe for our customers, I mean, our viewers might not exactly know what an agile methodology is. It's part of product development.
Yeah, it's part of SDLC, the way you really put up your codes, you really put up your releases, how fast you can do so while you have the entire governance in place, correct? So it's a way of faster moving into your shipment and then really getting your go-to-market strategy of your products enhanced without least errors. And if there are those, you can predict them and then really solve them beforehand.
Okay.
Additionally, cloud platforms. Now everyone understands, right, in terms of how everyone is moving into more cloud-based platforms, their infrastructure, their platforms, their technologies. Also with the automated technologies, right, they are really providing scalable operations. Now that is enabling GCCs to optimize their workflows, reduce inefficiencies, and meet the fluctuating demands as well. Like Forrester, just to give some facts, is Forrester predicts by 2025, 80% of the companies globally would really migrate or would have adopted global cloud solutions, because that's really an enabler. The second strategy is how are you really using the data-driven decision-making technologies and AI integration to it. So GCCs are increasingly relying on the data analytics, as Vinodh also mentioned, and Rakesh, from their industry experience. And I would call it in terms of really bringing that, analyzing the customer behavior, which you also touched upon, understanding the market trends and the operational data, that would help GCCs to make those proactive decisions and tailor-made products or services which are really aligning with that changes, right? And it's a very rapid changing market which we see today. In fact, Gartner predicts that AI-driven businesses will outperform the non-AI ones or that competitors by almost 25% in terms of customer satisfaction. That's really on the top, along with the cost efficiency and the overall performance of a GCC and other pricing models as well. Third thing is focus on digital transformation. I know we touched upon this, but what exactly the GCCs are currently doing or what they need to is really getting into that digital transformation to improve efficiency and customer experience by more of an inward looking as opposed to outward. I think that's the key aspect as opposed to what others need. First, you have to just be a little, I would say, introspect what my organization, what my company, what all technologies, everything is really going ahead. Are they meeting those new changes and requirements? Just to give an example is the machine learning or Internet of Things, blockchain, correct? Really are helping us to innovate and provide those real-time personalized solutions. So for an example, I was with the bank earlier before, so or BFSI, we also touched, right? So GCCs use AI to offer hyper-personalized, I would call banking experiences to our customers. And why is that? So today, how many of us really go to a bank to encash a check? Nobody, I would call it, right? It's just with your fingertips. So I think that kind of an experience is really, really helping us. And then the fourth aspect or the fourth strategy for me would be more of a global team collaboration. Very, very important. Understanding how we are doing. So given the complexity of serving global markets, understanding the cultural variances, I would call it, how the cross-functional and cross-geography teams need to work in synergy. So what is being done to help them synergize? So there are a couple of aspects which I think had really worked for us as well in the past is knowledge sharing, co-innovation, and real-time communications which are happening. Now we have so many platforms. Today, right now, everyone is listening across sitting in their homes or offices, right? How are we leveraging those collaborative tools more? And according to some of the studies which are going is we have platforms like Slack, Microsoft Teams, everything. But the essence of the subject is what avenues you are creating for somebody sitting in a GCC, let's say in India, and somebody sitting in UK. Are they participating in something like a hackathon? Are they trying to resolve any business related problems together? So that co-innovation kind of, I would say, spark has to be ignited by someone to really bring the teams together. And as we all know by now, more the collaboration, I would say, more the efficiency and the output and throughput you can expect. Lastly, what I would call it is more of a cultural diversity and innovation, how these are two related. As you said, the market is quite huge. Market itself and our customers are diverse in nature. What it means for the organization or the GCC is to have a diverse workforce because your customer base is diverse. So how are you going to be able to really serve them is having the diverse workforce at your end. And that brings a perspective of really bringing the team together, both from the cultural understanding part of it and the technological advancements part of it. So it's really I would say, a best equation if somebody can get through so that you can really, really harness the potential of getting a diverse workforce. And again, with some statistics from the Boston Consulting Group is really companies with diverse management teams really have a 19% higher innovation revenues generated. So just to recap, GCC's the ability to tap into local market insights through their regional teams is a competitive advantage. So I know there is a global strategy at the top. The product should not change. Let's take an Apple, correct? Or let's take a Netflix. But how are you also adjusting to the local or to the native space of those countries is crucially for them to become out, gain a competitive advantage. And by fostering an inclusive work culture, certainly and participation, GCCs can drive better customer experience and more innovative product offerings. Thank you.
Oh, no, fascinating. Vinodh, maybe you can help us understand to ensure such successful products. How can GCCs foster data-driven culture within their organizations to remain competitive in this AI era, especially considering how it's all based on data?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think data-driven culture, right? So it's a cultural change that we need to drive. Every decision in the organization should be data-driven. I think that's probably the North Star when we talk about data-driven culture standpoint. And I'm speaking from a retail standpoint. There are a lot of decision makers in retail, even today. Like retailers that I have been part of have been in business for over 100 years, so they're used to doing business and taking decisions in a certain way. So the legacy way of thinking is driven, and decision making is driven a lot by intuition and gut based decision making, less of data. I would say this was probably, say, 10 years ago maybe, but there are parts of the organization which were heavily resistant to data driven decisions. Hey, I know what I'm doing, I know my business, that kind of a resistance that we used to face from a GCC standpoint, but then things have changed significantly, right? So in order for us to drive a data driven culture, the first thing is companies need to adopt a product mindset. That I strongly feel is the foundation, because if you look at companies that have, like Amazon or Netflix or any other e-commerce companies that have probably that were started in late 90s or early 2000s, they started with a data-driven approach, right? They had a platform, they had models powering the back end of the platform, and that, look at where Amazon is in 25 years, right? So I think the power of data, I think it's and for every store or brick and mortar retailer or an omni-channel retailer to compete with Amazon, they have to kind of adopt or change to how can we leverage data more for our decision making. So that's become table stakes now. But how do we do that? If you look at e-commerce companies, they are very productized. Like, for instance, search, personalization, cart, checkout, right? These are all probably products within the website or the app, and they have a product mindset. They think about it from a product. Okay, how can I make my search experience on the website better for the customers? What do I learn from, what are they doing on my website? Okay, they're searching for this product, and every time they search this, it is taking them to a completely irrelevant page. How do I fix that, right? So this is, I would say, very data driven. So I'm kind of analyzing every customer behavior using data, and I'm able to kind of change very quickly. So product mindset, coming from the e-commerce world, but pretty much every company, retailer, non-retail, healthcare, fintech, whatever be the company, industry is, you have to have a product mindset. The second is you have to embrace a fail fast mindset. So a lot of strategies, and I know Anurag touched upon agile. So an agile and mindset is what I'm talking about here. A/B testing, I don't know how many of you have heard about it. So it is being able to test out everything before you push it out to the market. So I think fail fast, fail cheap, I think these are some terminologies that you have definitely heard about, but you have to have that in your mindset. The third thing is, I think it cannot be that you are bringing in new data, you are beefing up your tech stack, but you essentially, what needs to change is people, right? So the organization structure should definitely go through a revamp, and it should center around product teams. So you have product managers or product leaders who are day in and day out interfacing with the business teams. They are able to ascertain the needs of the business, and they're able to kind of translate it to maybe the GCC teams or the data science or analytics teams, and they're able to kind of churn out these products which are relevant not just to the business but also to the end customer, right? So there has to be an organizational structure change as well that needs to enable this culture. The fourth, I think GCCs are definitely driving this. There are a lot of chief data officers or chief AI officers sort of roles that are cropping up within GCCs. They're no longer in US or UK or where the parent locations are, but they are more and more getting created within the GCC. So the role of a CDO or a chief data officer, according to me, is more important than ever to drive this data driven culture. So hiring a CDO, setting up a data vision or strategy should be the immediate focus of organizations if you're not doing that already, right? So you're already late. That's what I would say if you're not doing that. And then I would say last two things that I want to mention is change has to happen at the grassroots level. So which means you need to equip business teams, like field teams, for example, in financial institutions or healthcare companies, or even in retail. The business teams need to be equipped with data and insights so they can make better and faster decisions. You should also train them to use data dashboards. How do you consume these insights, and how can you convert these business people as evangelists within the company? Because we need more and more people who are going to say, hey, I love the data that I'm getting. I love the reports that I'm getting. I'm making decisions using these data, right? That's what's going to foster a data-driven culture. And then lastly, data democracy. This is absolutely crucial. Data should be available for everybody in the company. Of course, it has to be role-based, right? You don't want to be sharing sensitive data with everybody in the company. Of course, role-based data sharing, but then every individual in the company should have access to data. They should be trained with some basic querying language like a SQL or any other. Like if you're on GCP, then can you train people on BigQuery, for instance, right? So I think there has to be a basic level of training and ability to consume data, which is absolutely important. So all these, it's definitely going to be maybe a journey. It's not going to happen like at the flip of a coin, but definitely a journey over a few years. But these are absolutely important for a company to become more data driven.
I think people are also a little bit hesitant, right? Yeah, when they see too many numbers in front of them, too much data. So I think maybe AI should be able to really help everyone digest all of this information, maybe better as well. Right?
Completely agree, which is where you have all these streams of data quality, data governance, ensuring that you are presenting the right data. In legacy retailers, I can definitely tell you there are multiple systems which are kind of talking about the same data, and every number is different. This is one of the biggest challenges retailers have. So how can there be a single source of truth within the company? So I think these are very, very critical. How confident are you? It's not just about like collecting data, generating insights and presenting it, but how confident are you about the data that you have? It's garbage in, garbage out, right? So there should be tremendous focus on data quality and governance as well.
Rakesh, we've touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can expand on what exactly are the key challenges when you're trying to, have good quality and good quantity of data so that you can leverage these data-driven insights to deliver personalized experiences.
Absolutely. And to Vinod's point, right? Garbage in, garbage out is pretty much the synopsis, right? Because when we think about it, a lot of these organizations, I mean, if you think about over the past 5 to 7 years, the concept of AI and ML being introduced into the way that you do business is it has been kind of a buzzword for a lot of organizations because they kind of just feel the need to, bring forth AI and ML solutions just because everybody else is, right? But the reality is, your data quality and the way that you kind of process your data to begin with is going to set the precedent for how you, continue into these initiatives. When you think about, a crawl, walk, run approach, these organizations aren't even at the crawling stage and they would just want to start and run. So it's not going to be the best, way to actually go about, how you introduce AI and ML concepts into the way that you do business. And so when we think about data quality, we're thinking about, organizations just having a lot of missing data, right? A lot of missing components, or, the columns of the data themselves can't be easily interpreted, right? If you're thinking about, for like a very simple example, right? If you're thinking about a date column, right, which has information about the date, the timestamp, date, month, year, everything like that. In order to interpret that, you have to actually split that out into the actual year, the month, the date as separate columns, maybe the time as a separate column, because that column in and of itself is going to be harder to interpret when you're trying to feed it into a model, right? So even the smallest nuances in terms of how you categorize your data can be a big proponent to that. And so, and when we think about sort of the data itself, we have to also be cognizant of the context of the data, right? Because you can't just think about the data as, as is without really thinking about, where the data came from, what the data actually means, what the data describes as well, right? So an example of that would be, let's say, for example, you wanted to do a time series analysis of, the house prices going up and down over the years. If you're just thinking about it as, a scale of progression, and you just think about the house prices by themselves without accounting for things like inflation or things like, the world wars that took place and how that affected, housing. All of these factors need to be considered if you're going to actually draw insights from the data. Sometimes you may want to maybe take a smaller time series to make more accurate predictions based on a shorter time span that, is a little bit more relevant today, right? Because, the problems that we had in 1920 versus 2020 are very different. So all of the context and, like actually thinking about the domain of the data that exists is going to, play a large role in terms of the quality and the quantity of the data that you actually process in order to draw the insights as well.
So, thanks for that. Vinodh, coming back to you, help us understand what emerging trends in the customer experience space, which will define the space in the coming years. Like, what are these trends that you see?
Yeah, obviously the power of AI and now generative AI has enabled tons of possibilities, but I would say maybe the top 5 or 6 things that come to my mind. First one is hyper personalization. Irrespective of the industry, it is going to be I think it's going to be the primary focus of what AI can do to customer experience. So when I talk about hyper personalization, it is like real time. I mean, I think we're already there in terms of personalized offerings to our customers, but are we there real time? Probably not. So real time recommendations, like you're right now browsing something and I'm like, recommending something to you based on what you browse, right? So that's like extremely personalized. The second is dynamic content, right? So not personalized content. I think pretty much with 5G and 6G maybe next year. So I think the amount of content that we are consuming these days, how can we really personalize content to the customers? So I think that's like and that's like a expectation from the customers, right? It is not even it's stated and it's also inferred as an expectation that customers want very personalized content delivered to them. So that is something that's going to take over this space. And then the third thing is, it's not like I'm going to go and if I want to buy something, I don't necessarily I want to experience it. Like for instance, virtual trial rooms. Why are retailers even spending tons of money in setting something up like a virtual trial room, right? It's because for me, experience matters before even buying a product. Like, hey, how am I going to look in this dress? Or even if you're planning a travel destination, a lot of information about how things will be. Like, so experience over product. I think this is a space that is definitely going to define customer experience. The next is, I know everybody's talking about AI taking over jobs, but it's essentially going to be human plus AI, right? So how can AI augment customer service? And I've already seen like personal experiences where I know maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you used to interact with a chatbot and it was frustrating, to be honest, right? But these days, even chatbots are a lot more, I would say, smart. There have been eureka moments for me, like, wow, how did that was really great experience with a chatbot, right? Or you have these AI agents that are kind of assisting you. So I think AI enhanced customer experience, I think that is going to be the key. So that is every company is investing in how can I augment my customer service using AI. The third is going to be multimodal customer interactions. I think given it's no longer just text or speech, it is going to be video, it is going to be all possible. Like even ChatGPT is like, multimodal now, right? So it can take in variety of inputs. So I think multimodal customer interaction. So customers in a particular interaction will switch between voice and text and video and whatnot. So how can you power or make that happen? And then one challenge that retailers face, especially omni-channel retail. Omni-channel is a retailer that has stores, that has website, that has an app, that probably has any other commerce channels as well. So how can real-time integration happen across all these channels? Like for instance, let's say I'm browsing on flipkart.com and I am searching for something, and I am walking into Flipkart is a bad example. They don't have stores, but let's say I'm browsing on Tata Chroma, and I'm walking into a Chroma store. They know immediately that, hey, I was searching for, let's say, an iPhone 16, and they are able to provide a customer experience that is truly going to wow me and make me buy that iPhone 16, right? So real-time integration across the channels, I think that is going to be key. And then lastly, everybody's talking about it, but there is a long way to go. There is responsible AI. I think ethics, how are we using the data? How are we enabling customers to choose how we can use their data, taking care of privacy? How are we being more transparent in terms of our machine learning models? How are we making decisions, for instance, right? So it's a large topic, but that is primarily going to dictate customer experience in the future. So these are, I would say, my top 5 next set of trends that we are looking at in customer experience.
Okay, thank you for that. Rakesh, same question to you. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Vinodh did a great job of covering a lot of sort of the customer, specific things that will emerge over the next 3 to 5 years. And the only thing I want to add is kind of the sheer intelligence of the AI that is going to exist within even 3-4 years, right? I mean, this is if you think about it, over the last, 4 or so years, we went from GPT-2 to GPT-4. And the cognitive ability of GPT-2 existed around, about the cognition of a preschooler, whereas GPT-4 is basically like a very smart high schooler, right? So there's actually a paper written by a gentleman by the name of Leopold Aschenbrenner, who is ex-OpenAI. And he wrote a paper called Situational Awareness, which basically predicts that by 2027, we would likely be able to achieve what's called AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, which is essentially AI with human level cognition, to Vinod's point, right? So this is like being able to augment AI, but also just having the cognition level of a very, very smart individual. And this is not, this isn't really sci-fi. It's basically just looking at general trends of, if you think about how we've been able to find gains in compute power as well as algorithmic efficiencies over the last, not even 4 years, but even the last 10 years, it's just a linear progression, right? And so, based on what we've been able to achieve so far and on the efficiencies we're able to gain within four or so years, the cognition level of the next GPT should likely have, the abilities of an AI researcher or AI engineer, or even like a PhD holder, right? So a lot of the ability to understand, as well as the ability to predict and the ability to give answers, will be much more intelligible. And when we're thinking about even just understanding, like interpreting the intent of your chatbot experience, right? So to Vinod's point, if you ask, the chatbot a question in 4 years, it's going to do a lot better of a job even just comprehending your question, let alone giving you a very, knowledgeable response. So I think, that's kind of the general trend to where we're kind of, getting to. But that's, I mean, it's just natural progression of all of the brain power that's being put into, advances in the AI and ML space, and where it's going to end up within the next 4 or so years.
Okay, fascinating. Anurag, how much of customer centricity is globalized versus nature nation culture specific. How are these nuances catered to in the product? Can AI ML solutions alone solve for this?
Wonderful. Okay, there are three questions in this one. So let me start with the first one. And we spoke about the customer centricity right now. Certainly, it's a crucial aspect, right, of global business strategies and how much of it is globalized versus nation or what you said, cultural specific, depends on the industry type, certainly the product as well as the customer base. While some customer-centric practices can be really, really made globalized, others must be really tailored to those, I would say, the nation, the cultural language settings, preferences, which are really, really helping them to scale their business. Let me try sharing few examples or those aspects where we can strike a right balance. And do we have a right equation? Certainly, I'll get into that as well based on the studies so far. How much percentages we should really go for a globalized versus the cultural setup. So at a high level, what is we are looking at a globalized customer centricity, right? So there is a product which gets launched. It would have some of the features which needs to be across the globe same. What would change over there would be how the marketing strategy is, correct? How the local market, how the regional capacity people are really able to understand what those features are. So first and foremost is a seamless user experience, what we call UX. I know Vinodh touched upon it. So how we are setting up a simple, intuitive interface that provides a service, I would say a consistent service platform across the globe. So that would come under the global customer centricity aspect of it. Core product functionality. What are the primary features or the services provided by those? And that should remain consistent across the globe. Let's say if you are using MS Office, we are using Google Suites, correct? So how does it change based on the regions or countries? No, it's the core functionality remains same and it's customizable. Brand value and reputation. So again, that any brand getting launched any part of the globe would keep and continue doing so. Let's say if it is Apple, let's say if it's a Coca-Cola, getting into the retail side of it, really they need the same level of trust, transparency, and commitment, I would call it, from the service expected from these bigger brands. So what invariably differentiates the cultural or the specific or customer centricity then? I would call it in more 3 or 4 major parts of it, which would be the first, language and communication style. So how does the content localization is happening? We started with an example of Netflix, right? How it really caters to the local languages, customizes its subtitles, the dubbing aspects, local recommendations based on your viewing history, and then recommending, okay, this is suitable for you if you're sitting in this part of the globe. So that's one aspect. Payment preferences. We all know within India, UPI is really, really taking it over, right? Where other countries are also following. Alipay in, let's say, China. So understanding those different countries, different preferences. Majorly within the US, we have credit cards as a mode of, I would say, more preferred use of mode of payment. Design and aesthetics. So when you say cultural preferences influence design choices, so how are the vibrant colors taken over here as opposed to any other cultural countries, different countries as well? So we need to be mindful of those. And then lastly, but more importantly, is the regulatory aspects or the compliance and the data privacy, which we spoke about. How does that is taking care? Let it be a healthcare industry, financial or e-commerce. GDPR in Europe, as we understand, is an example of this, where companies must be vigilant about data privacy standards that differ from those in the US or Asia. So they curated that for a good reason of it. So in a nutshell, if you call it 60% globalization, 40% localization, and according to a study by Nielsen, that's the typical ratio which has been maintained, I think, and those 40% which are localized or cultural relevance. So really for those instance, branding and core product offerings, while can remain global, the specific marketing messages, customer support, personalizations are really tailored regionally. So I think that can become a good distribution channel of it. The second part of question is how are these nuances of yours, what you mentioned, cater to into the product itself, right? So the localization, which I spoke about, and the customization aspects. So how the content translation, custom feature developments, let's say Uber right now gives you a lot of variables. If you are really going and hopping on a ride, it gives you right from a Bike, I don't know they have started, but there is another provider, but they give you different options in terms of cars, depending upon your family size, your requirement perspective. So where is that coming? So it's a feature development based on, it's a customized development which they are doing and offering for their, I would say, customers over here. And then the customer support adaptation. I remember long back when I started my career with the Cisco support, we used to really strive hard to get the CSAT scores and understanding a various part of the customers calling from different countries, how difficult it was to gauge. And everyone was not at the par because the lens where they see through the customer experience was different and varies regionally as well today. So that's the another part of it. Cross-cultural teams, certainly companies with global reach, I already spoke about this, certainly can add more value in bringing that local, or I would say uh, regional customer centricity as well in understanding the needs better. Third part of your question, which you said was, can AI/ML really solve this or alone solve for this particular problem if we are facing this? So to be honest, AI/ML is really, they are the powerful tools, right? And these are meant to enhance customer centricity, but through really doing the data churning, data-driven decision making, and churning out more. What is missing out is that human intervention, the human aspects. And I know Rakesh touched upon it by 2027, but today, if I want to say that, it's a mix of it. So what I would call it is more of NEI, which is natural intelligence or human interface along with the AI club together to really give you the right capabilities if you want to thrive in your business. So some capabilities of AI/ML we already spoke about. It's data-driven personalizations, sentiment analysis, and NLPs, right? How NLP models like ChatGPTs currently are really taking it over and helping, I would say, for the better cause of it. Predictive analysis, which is really, really nice. Automated content localization, Google translators. There are Duolingo's platforms who are really helping. If you want to learn a new language today, sitting over here in India, right? So you don't have to really travel and get an instructor. There are applications who can help you learn. So those are this. What would we call the limitations of AI/ML then in this space is really that cultural sensitivity and the context part of it, right? Understanding the deep cultural subtleties, what we call, which humans can understand, and not the programs or algorithms. Most important point, ethical considerations. I know Vinodh touched once on that aspect as well, about how is that model trained on the data? Which algorithm, where, who's really programming it? Is it having that bias, the cultural bias induced into that algorithms, right? So that's one major part of it where it needs to scale. And adaptability to new trends, like it needs time to learn from new data so rapidly that while you would have like the chat GPT versions, why they were, because the chat GPT free version gives you data back till 2022. What would you do to get 2024 data real time right now? What's happening in the world? You have to buy and pay for the price of it. But that's again a little limitation, right? You have to pay and then get those licenses. So as a conclusion, I would call it, it's a real mix of customer centricity is a balance between the global processes, practices, focus on universal needs, and localized approach that really cater to specific preferences. So that's pretty much what I would leave with.
Okay, excellent. That was fascinating. We have this question from Mohammed Dawood. He first says this is a very informative webinar. And he also asks, which is there any industry that is most suitable to establish a GCC in India? Anurag, maybe you might be the best person. Is it BFSI, healthcare, what is it?
Currently, I would call, when I was mentioning 1700 plus GCCs already in India, out of which 500, almost 500 plus are dedicated to AI/ML. The industry sectors are varied, like it's catering to everything. But if you ask to pick specific, I'm sure the telecom industry or really, yeah, that's something which is really taking up in terms of setting their footprints. And one other facet to that is, while we are looking from a sector lens, if you look at from the tiering of the cities where GCCs are, while we know Bangalore is the hub within India, followed by Hyderabad's, then Delhi's, or those metros which we name. But there is a real fast-paced development in the tier 2, tier 3 cities as well today. Just to name a few, like down south is Mysore, then you have Davangere, Mangalore, which are again surrounded across Bangalore itself. If you come little in the mid, we have Indore, which is picking up. Now, Lucknow is the new hub where people are exploring down in the north, apart from just the NCR region kind of it. So I think looking at those as well, and where those industries in that particular region of within India would really flourish, along with the talent pool availability, certainly would dictate how you would like to get your business growth.
Okay, excellent. Vinodh, we're running out of time, so you get the last questions. How can GCCs maneuver data regulations, ethical concerns on data usage across markets? How do they get through that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's it's a very vast topic. I know I touched briefly upon, I would say responsible AI, but then I think, see, GCC is the biggest. I wouldn't call it a challenge, but the way GCCs are set up, we are so far away. We are cut out from the parent organization, right? If it is a US based company, we are literally 10,000 miles away from where the true action happens. And in the case of a heavily customer facing industry like retail, I think sitting out of GCC, you're probably just crunching numbers or coding, but you really don't understand why you are doing what you're doing, and that's the context, right? So GCCs have probably a larger role to maneuver, or rather a larger responsibility when it comes to dealing with data, and how can we be more responsible about the AI solutions that are being developed within the GCC. So the first thing is, I think people need to be aware of these data regulations. There is honestly not a lot of training that currently happens in terms of what is GDPR, what is CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act, for instance, or our very own I think Personal Data Protection Act or something like that, PDP in India, right? So how many of us are even aware of what these data regulations are? And I'm not talking about reading through hundreds of pages, but like knowing the gist of it. So one is creating awareness of all these data regulations. If you're dealing primarily with US, you need to be aware of CCPA, PDP, because you're in India and so on. If you're catering to multiple geographies as a GCC, you should be creating specific strategies for the market. Primarily for consent, it varies by country, like in terms of in India, our Aadhaar numbers are like available everywhere, unlike a social security number in the US, right? So somebody needs to provide consent for you to use that data. So you need to know what are the specific strategies by the market for consent, for data retention and usage, and also for data security, and also for cross-border data transfer, data storage. I think MasterCard was in the middle of it, that I think RBI had enforced them to have all their data, India data needs to be stored within India, whereas I think they were having it in Singapore or elsewhere. So I think you need to be compliant with country specific data storage requirements. I think responsible AI, it's literally a PhD or a double PhD topic. It should probably be the biggest strategy that should govern the usage of AI ML across the enterprise. So you need to ensure that the models that you are building are fair, which means they're not biased. They're transparent, which means as a customer, I know how you're using my data, and why are you not issuing a credit card to me? I should be able to explain why, and I'm like being transparent with you, right? I think not all companies are able to do that yet, but we should get there. The biggest thing for us to do is within every company, there has to be a governance committee for responsible AI that needs to be established. And this committee should be responsible for performing audits, like regular data audits. Is my data meeting a lot of compliance requirements? They should be doing some ethics assessment. Companies should be accountable to public, and we should be publishing reports in the future in terms of public accountability, that this is the data that we have and this is how we consume or use the data. And then lastly, I think we should provide self-serve options to customers. As a customer, I should go in and be able to view my data, modify it, or even delete it, right? I should be I should have the power for over my data, and that's what all these regulations are all about. So, and you need to provide the customers the option to opt out. If I'm not comfortable with a company using my data, I should have the option to opt out. Do not disturb. I know we sign up for it, but I pretty much, Bajaj Finance gives me a call literally every day. So I think we should enforce and we should provide the customer the power to opt out, and we should truly make that happen, right? And then lastly, you need to invest a lot on AI powered compliance tools. So these tools automatically monitor, are you adhering to all the privacy regulations, all the data regulations that are there, and it will flag anomalies, like it raises red flags at the right time. So I think the cost of not being responsible with data usage is just growing by the day, and companies are already paying billions of dollars in penalties because of the way they have used data in the past or currently using. So I think it's the most important strategy or topic that should be on top of every CEO's mind right now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I think everyone, all our listeners, will have a much clearer understanding of exactly how artificial intelligence and machine learning is transforming GCC's capabilities, how it's driving innovation, how it's delivering exceptional value to customers. So, Anurag, Vinodh, Rakesh, thank you so much. And thanks to our listeners as well.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Having an interesting one today. Thank you so much.
Take
Take care, everyone.
Appreciate
Thank
the time.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.